She's the host on this
Good
show.
morning, everyone.
Good morning.
It's good to see everybody. And especially as we are moving through our John study, getting closer and closer to the end. So how are we looking on people's guesses?
My timeline, I believe, was July through August, around there.
Okay. I don't know about the very beginning. Just a couple classes ago, I
think it's going to take us a month to get 4 more Sundays to get through this.
We started in September 23.
Yeah.
So at least make it to the 2nd of September. That'd be 2 full years.
Wow.
Yes, it's not to my mom and dad.
I don't know how to take that.
That means you got to make it spread a month.
Yeah.
Jamie, what do you think?
Oh, I think I can make it go a month or 2.
Well, we ended last time, verse 29. And as I said, we probably could have moved through 30 and 31, except with 30 and 31 being a conclusion to 20, it's really an introduction into 21. So the two are really needing to go together, and especially with how 21 is going to begin, in taking a look at, or bringing into the spotlight certain disciples mentioned by name. So in verse 30, after Jesus has died, been buried, has resurrected, and he's shown himself to his apostles, Thomas being missing, now Thomas being with them, the commission being stated to them on how that they would be sent out just as Christ was sent out, and giving the breathing on them and giving the representation of what was to come, and their receiving of the gift of the Holy Spirit and being able to lead them and guide them and to instruct them to all truth. Then John records this. And many other signs truly did Jesus in the presence of his disciples, which are not written in this book. That, while on one hand, this is a comforting statement, but it also produces some discomfort. So the comfort being what we've been discussing all of this time, and that, okay, it's what John said back in chapter 19. Here's the one that witnessed these things, and he's bearing record, and you know that the record is true. Okay, we know these things are true. We know that we can trust them. There's your comfort. But then, what's the discomforting element? And when I say discomfort, it's not in any way, shape, or form trying to say that there's anything wrong with what's being stated here or what's being done. But it's just the fact of, well, okay, we have this statement being made, but then there's this other element that goes along with it.
What are we missing out on? Sorry.
Okay, all right.
I was just going to say the unknown.
Okay, so Jamie mentioned what are we missing out on, and Reese mentioned the unknown. And this gives us a clear picture that there are some things that are unknown.
Would Thomas have been excluded from those things since he missed the first part of Jesus?
Oh, I don't know. So when we're considering that aspect, it really puts us in a position where we have to be careful in how we go about in dealing with certain people and dealing with certain topics. Because while there are things that are here recorded that we can know, there are other things that we're not able to know and possibly not even intended to know. And that if you're going to go diving off, digging into those things, you can get yourself into more trouble than you're actually needing to. So let's consider this from the positive standpoint first. Here's John, and he states very clearly that he was being led to write about certain things. There are things that were given to John that Matthew, Mark, and Luke do not record. John 13 through 17 is recorded specifically by John only, and going to the certain details that we have. The washing of the apostles' feet, for example, not mentioned anywhere else. But we're also being shown that in writing of this material, it's not intended to give a point-by-point record of everything that Jesus said or did. So could there be some things out there that Jesus said that we don't know about? Yeah. Are we okay with that?
We have to be.
Yeah, it kind of have to be, but it goes back into the idea of, well, what are we missing out on?
But along with that, it would all have to correlate with each other anyways. So
Yeah.
not that yes, those things would be great to have, but it's not like we're missing an element of salvation or something like
Okay.
that to where it's detrimental for
Right.
us.
Not only that, but there's elements like
Hold on.
overlap and they harmonize. The Gospels are harmonized, and so the book would be too big and too thick for everything that Jesus said and taught.
Yeah.
You guys say that over.
I'm loud.
Nope. Do it again.
Said he gave us everything that we need for life and godliness and how to be saved. And so a lot of brethren are always nitpicking on the little details of things that weren't things that added because we didn't need them. You're making me nervous.
It's got to get on the record. Okay, now Jamie.
Okay. The only thing I would say is we already have to think this way because God doesn't tell us, from the very beginning. He doesn't give us details, and we have to live with the fact that we don't know how, except for in Job where he tells us a little bit and how he tilted the earth, but we don't know so much already.
Yeah.
So
He tilted it because the earth's flat.
Right. So we have that being mentioned here in verse 30, and John will write this same idea again at the end of 21. There are also many other things which Jesus did, the which, if they should be written every one, I suppose that even the world itself could not contain the books that should be written. Even that being brought in consideration, that, okay, here we are looking at 3 years of life, and we have a record of what he did. And what he did is already so overwhelming. And then for John to throw this piece in there, it's just, well, that's not even a drop in the bucket. And it's just like, what else was going on? But I would imagine it's going to be very similar. If any, it's not going to be all that different from what we have being recorded. And even for John to say what he states here, I suppose that even the world itself could not contain the books that should be written. And can you imagine the size of the book if God recorded not even just everything that Jesus did, but just think about every jot and every tittle of human history, if that was his aim and that was his purpose. We wouldn't be able to carry the book around. If we're looking at this from, okay, we're going to give you every detail about Babylon. We're going to give you every detail about the Medes and the Persians, Egyptian history. I mean, even from the time frame just getting off the ark and just recording every single thing that took place, you wouldn't have time to read it. And then even to consider if God was required to answer every little insignificant question that people might have. And again, just how large the book would be that we'd have to carry around so as to be able to answer all that stuff. But it's not necessary. So what we have being shown to us is the fact that, God is not telling us everything. Now, that doesn't mean that we cannot go to other places and be able to find some of these other things. Historical writings like Josephus. he's not inspired, but as far as he is being truthful to what took place during the time frame in which he lived, well then okay, we can get some extra details and insight of different things that people were talking about. But then we just have to come back to the reality that, okay, it is not designed for us to know everything. And so, and just not even looking at this from the standpoint of just John, but the entire Bible is written in that same format. And that the entire Bible has been written in the same manner and for a special reason. It's not 100% detail of the accounts of man's history, but it is a history so as to get us to where we are in our John study. To get us to the Christ. Edmund, calm down. To get us to Jesus and to get us to salvation. And for anybody that might come along and just, want to raise a question about, well, how do you explain this? How do you explain that? If the Bible doesn't tell us, if the Bible doesn't record it, then I can't go any further than what the Bible actually says. So even, just think about the way the Bible opens. The Bible starts, Genesis 1. And the Bible does not start, God does not start by giving an explanation of how it is that He exists. The record just starts that God exists. It just starts with the assumption that you're going to acknowledge and believe that, okay, there was God. Oh, where did He come from? How did He get His start? What was going on before the worlds began? We don't have that detail. He doesn't tell us. So then when we're considering these facts of what God has given us contrasted to what has been, and it's not even necessarily a thing that is kept back, it was just chosen not to be recorded, we then have to take on a position similar to that of Adam and Eve.
I was going to say that.
And that, okay, here we are, we've been created, and they obviously had some knowledge already, otherwise how was Adam able to name the animals? But just like with Adam and Eve, it is a trusting and a reliance on God that He's going to give us what we need. And then being satisfied with that. And that we don't need to get ourselves in trouble like they got themselves in trouble, wandering off into areas where they didn't belong. What?
Have you ever met anyone?
Nope, you're going to have to say that over.
So have you ever met anyone who tried to twist verse 30, the part about which are not written in this book? So try to twist it to make it seem like, oh, there are other books to try to fit their beliefs or...
Catholics.
Yeah, I've not run into anybody personally, but I can see them doing that, trying to bring in the Apocrypha. And
Well, how would you answer that?
how would you answer it?
I don't know, that's why I asked you.
Huh? What?
I don't know, that's why I asked you.
Okay, how do we defend against the Apocrypha? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what that is. I'm kind of
Okay, let's
retarded.
start over. What is the Apocrypha?
I feel like Alex Jones. I'm kind of retarded. Like,
The Catholic.
Well, that's not just Catholic, but keep going.
the Book of Toby and the whatever. It's the only one I know from
I
Catholic.
knew it at one point, now I can't remember.
Well, yeah, Christina brought that one up.
Yeah.
But that doesn't answer what is the Apocrypha.
The answer is we don't need the Apocrypha.
Is that the Maccabees?
Well,
and all that
that's not a
stuff?
proper answer. Huh?
The Maccabees and all those extra books.
Okay, well, so even with the Maccabees, from what I remember about studying the book of Maccabees, even within themselves, they do not claim to be an inspired book. They're just purely historical. Josephus references them and includes them in a lot of his writings. But setting that to the side, there could be certain copies of the Apocrypha that do have those books in them. The Apocrypha are pseudo-inspired, false claimed inspired writings. For example, you have some Old Testament writings, quote-unquote writings, that are supposed to be extra books from Isaiah, extra books from Jeremiah's friend,
Ezekiel.
Baruch. He supposedly had written his own prophetic statements, so on and so forth. Then into the New Testament, they have extra gospels. Gospel of Thomas, supposedly Mary Magdalene wrote something. The Book of Enoch is another one that's included in the apocryphal writings. You have these biblical names supposedly writing these biblical materials. And then you have some people that look at those and say, well, yeah, we should have those included. Even if you don't view them as actually being part of canon, you should still include them because they're biblical writers, biblical names, writing about biblical material. So that's what they are. Now back to the original question. How would we argue against those?
I could see Thomas because he's an apostle.
Yeah.
So anything that's from the apostles, because they were inspired specifically. But the people themselves knew because they were receiving the letters from Paul and the teachings and that sort. And so they were spreading them around. And so people had that. That's about all I can give to it.
Okay.
I would think the same thing with Joseph Smith is they're bringing a different gospel. So that would go against Galatians and whatever. If we are an angel, come to you giving any other gospel.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. But if it contradicts, so Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John all intertwine with each other, and then there's correlations within the Bible, all these different correlations, and then the books on top of that with the Book of Mormon and their other one,
Pearl of Great Price, Doctrine and Covenants.
Yeah, all those, they contradict the Bible. So if you have that contradiction, then it doesn't all fit seamlessly. So that would be the way that I would go about it.
Okay.
Yeah, I just see you have to read them and counter them. Because you can't go at them. If you just went at them with Galatians, then they say, well, why is Galatians more inspired than this?
Right.
So you'd have to go through and find the contradictions.
Right. And that is going to be the key to it. You'd have to spend some time going either into the Apocrypha yourself or going through somebody else's breakdown of them. And one of the main issues that you have with them is that with many of them, they do not claim inspiration. Throughout the Old Testament with the prophets, and even in the New Testament with the prophets, it's, well, the Lord has said. The Lord has said. In a lot of the Apocryphal books, you don't have that. Now, granted, that's not a 100% way of disproving it, because what actual Old Testament book do we have that would fall into that same problem? Nope. Esther. Esther has no reference to the name of God. So why is it that that book's in canon? Well, even though it is missing the name of God, it still rings true with inspiration and fits in line with Israel history. So there's other ways to be able to prove that book fitting into actual historical events. The Gospel of Thomas, for example, the problems that it has, it is supposedly missing information about the childhood of Jesus. So there again, if we have Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John for that matter, none of those give any type of, well, scratch that. Luke gives brief insight into the childhood of Jesus being at 12. But nobody else does. Then all of a sudden we have this gospel account, and it's just wanting to focus 100% on the childhood of Jesus. So there's a problem there in lining up and synchronizing with the other books. But then also, when you get to reading it, Jesus comes across as a spoiled brat in his behavior. And it's just, okay, we know by the age of 12 he was already in recognition that he had a higher reason for being here on this earth. So being a child, he's not going to abuse the power supposedly that he had. And which even there, so running into issues with things that we know that are true, they would have him being able to perform miracles as a child. But how do we know from the other scriptures, from true scriptures, he wasn't performing miracles as a child?
With John 2 says this is the first of his, but how did his mom know he could do that? And why did she get to say, do this now? Yeah.
Well, because of what happened at the temple. She's already starting to track things, that things are not as they appear. Yeah. So John 2 records the turning of water into wine as the beginning of his miracles. He wasn't doing anything as a child. Okay, the Gospel of Thomas is false.
So basically, Thomas really did miss out for not being there at the beginning.
So he had to make
Yeah,
everything up.
right.
So we're claiming though that wasn't Thomas then.
Right. It is somebody in the first century trying to take advantage of the fact that, oh, here are these gospel, this gospel information, it's very popular. I'm going to tack on to it.
Simon Sorcerer.
Yeah. For,
Put it under an alias.
yeah, for gain. And that's what people do. Why do people counterfeit money? It's got value. Okay, why would somebody make up a false gospel? It's got value. And you got to think about during that time frame where Paul and others are warning about false teachers that are going to come in. They're going to try to make merchandise of you, and they're going to try to pull you away from the faith so as to have you follow them. An easy way to do that is, well, I got this new gospel. So Joseph Smith's trick isn't anything new.
His letters were circling and everyone knew that.
Yep.
Especially if they're sneaking in.
Yep.
And then they're saying, oh, a letter from Paul, a letter from da-da-da,
Yep.
da-da-da.
Letter from Thomas. Yep.
How did they know that Thomas's letters weren't going to make it? So we'll just add in a Thomas letter.
Well, and so that's the other thing too is, and I need to come up with a different term for them, but the church fathers. Those in the first century that were in first association with the church and in direct association with the apostles themselves. You start reading their writings, and they do not acknowledge any of those other pseudo-gospels. They don't quote them, they don't reference them in their sermons, and that is one of the powerful things about having that extra record from that time period, in that when you start reading their letters or you start reading their sermons from that time period, you're going to find most of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Like you could retrace and re-put together the New Testament based upon what they wrote and what they said. And that ends up being a really good proof against the argument about, well, Mark 16 shouldn't be in there. Because you start reading the church fathers, some of their letters and some of their sermons, and guess what they're quoting?
Mark 16.
Mark 16, 16 through 20. So yeah, that's a crash course on how to deal with that.
Wasn't it Floyd Wallace who said that of all of the basically 2,500 manuscripts or whatever, that only 2 didn't have Mark? Doesn't
Right.
He
Yeah.
say that?
Yep. Yeah, just the copies and the copies and the copies that we have, that section of Mark 16 is included.
I'm going to change my date to September.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you have other passages like this that go into play. 1 Timothy 1, verse 4, 1 Timothy 6, 4 and 5. Neither give heed to fables and endless genealogies which minister questions rather than godly edifying, which is in faith, so do. So to your question about getting into it with people about flat earth, just come on. We've got bigger things to deal with. And to really hold on to that as though you've actually got something when you yourself really can't prove it. And even when there's plenty of information out there where people have gone to try to prove flat earth and they end up being disproven that the earth is flat, it's just ridiculous to get caught up in that. And it usually is, they'll go into those avenues because it's one of those things where unless you really have the skills or the equipment to prove it, disprove it, then it's one of those things that just turns into an endless argument.
Well, along with that, with the flat earth and all that, the conversations that I've been having, it's not just that the earth is flat, but that the firmament is heaven outside of the firmament, and in the what we would call the center of the earth, it's below the earth is hell. So there's this big old, I'd say, conspiracy on it, that there's 5 pillars holding up our earth right now, and when the time comes, then the new earth is going to be here. So they're trying to correlate it in with the rapture and all these different things.
Okay.
That's what I was talking to you about. Okay. I don't care if the earth is a halo, like I can see the China from here.
Right.
I don't care if it's a halo. It's like, when does it come to a point where it's like, okay, now you're starting to try to mix the Bible into the flat earth, into your own spin off of something. So that's what I was saying.
Then that would be a problematic position to be in, and it would be a point of contention, because then it's a situation of, okay, you got to prove it, not you saying the person who's trying to build the case. In debate, they would be in the affirmative. Here's what I believe. Okay, you got to give evidence so as to back it up. And if you don't have any, then it's not real. Like your argument falls basically on the fundamental premises of logical fallacies. And then especially there too, trying to mix in. I mean, and just to completely mess up the whole firmament argument. I mean, God himself describes the firmament as being something that was around the earth, not something where he dwells. So, that's a manipulation and perversion of the text.
No, I'm just thinking, what I said to Reese when he was talking.
She says no, but it's just...
When Reese was talking to me about this, but it's, it's the basic spiritual versus physical. I mean, God's spiritual.
Yeah.
You look at me?
Yeah. Anything else? Okay.
Not really. I could go on and on about Walt Disney.
Let's leave that out. 1 Timothy 6, 4 and 5. This evil, wicked person is proud, knowing nothing, but doting about questions and strifes of words, whereof cometh envy, strife, railings, evil surmisings, perverse disputing, so there's a bad kind of disputing, of men of corrupt minds and destitute of the truth, supposing that gain is godliness, from such withdraw thyself. So even Paul indicates that, all right, there's some things you just don't need to get into. And that if this is the kind of person that you're dealing with, then, okay, you withdraw yourself from that. Isolate yourself. Verse 30, okay, anything before we go on to 31? Okay. But these are written. So he acknowledges, I've written these things down, but there's some things that I'm not writing. And he even concludes as to the reason why. These are written, that ye might believe. So here's what produces faith. And here's where our faith is placed. That Jesus, we're not having to wonder and we're not having to guess as to who our faith is supposed to be in. He's named. That you might believe that Jesus is the Christ. Here's what we're to believe about him. He's the anointed one. He is the Messiah. He's the fulfillment of promise and prophecy throughout the Old Testament. And that we are to believe that He is the Son of God. He is deity, God in the flesh. He is Emmanuel, God with us. And here's what we're supposed to be believing. Here's what faith is supposed to be produced in us by reading the things that John wrote. And not only what John wrote, but what Matthew, Mark, and Luke are also recording. All of that going together. And that believing, ye might have life through His name. Why would He come to earth? Why should I believe? What is this all about? It's about having life. As we've mentioned throughout our studies, Jesus, in being the revelation of God to mankind, He is the revelation of light, He's revelation of love, and He's the revelation of life. What is this light that we're supposed to be following? What's this light that we're supposed to be holding on to? He's going to show that. Well, what does love really look like? How does love behave itself? He showed us that. What is life? What is truly living? We all exist, but not everybody lives. What makes the difference? He showed that. We have life through His name, through His person, through His power. We're back in John 14:6, where Jesus stated, I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life. So John has completed this chapter, and he has completed in telling us the purpose of his writing. So why doesn't John stop here? We have this record. It's been recorded. We know the record is true. We get to chapter 20, 30, and 31. He says, okay, there's many other things I could write to you about, but I'm not going to do that. Here's what you're needing so as to have faith. Why doesn't it stop?
Well, Jesus is going to hand over the reins of His word to the apostles. We get to see that.
Okay.
And by them, we also have to take over when they're
Right. Any other thoughts? Well, have you even stopped to consider that question to begin with? My first question was, if this is the conclusion, here's the purpose of why he wrote all of this, then why not just stop in 20? Why write chapter 21?
Because it wasn't all said.
Well, according to him, it was.
No.
Yeah?
When they found it later, it added it on. Because how could Peter be there and then Peter's fishing? And then Jesus has to have the conversation of, you love me, you love me, you love me.
This is where the literary complex or complexity of the Bible comes into play. When we were in John 1 through 18, I believe we mentioned how that was working as a prologue, as a preface. So when you have a prologue or preface in the book, what do you have?
thing after.
No.
Well, you say it in your next sentence, but you're setting everyone up, you're laying the groundwork so that when the real book comes into play, you can have an understanding.
Okay. Typically, when I read a book, I hate the preface because I just want to get into it. But the preface is there for a purpose. And what Jamie mentioned is what I have here on the screen. The preface is to get everybody ready and teed up to understand what's coming. And that's what you have verses 1 through 18. There's all that discussion about in the beginning was the Word. And the Word was with God. And the Word was God. Well, all of that's going to be talked about throughout the rest of the book. So why mention it there? It's letting you know where we're going. So then, if John 1 through 18 is the preface, then what you have with most books is an epilogue or a conclusion. That's what John 21 is. It is a concluding section that rounds out the design of a literary work. That's what an epilogue does. And John 21 is going to answer for us why John kept writing, because John 21 is going to be practical application of what we just read in John 20, 30, and 31 in real life. Christ came and he lived and he lived among men, died, resurrected. But he's going to ascend back to God. And chapter 21 is going to help to show us how this relationship is going to continue on after he leaves. And it's going to show us the principles of these things are written that you might believe that Jesus is the Christ, he is the Son of God. It's going to give us real-time examples of how those principles are coming into play and the effects that it had on different individuals' lives and how it's supposed to have an effect on our lives. So 21 opens like this. After these things, Jesus showed himself again to the disciples at the Sea of Tiberias, and on this wise showed he himself. There's something special here that's taking place, and that can be seen by the words that he showed himself on this wise, or he showed himself in this manner, this way. Well, what's special about this way? Now, as we've gone through in studying John's record, what term does John use for the powerful things that Jesus performed?
It's not.
Signs. It's not miracles in John's record. It's signs. Because signs signifies something deeper that's happening. He's not just healing somebody for the sake of healing them. And in John's record, every time Jesus performed a sign, what followed?
A miracle.
No.
Words.
Teaching, description. He gives a sermon about what has just happened. So then for this to take place, well, he did this and he did it on this wise. Okay, antennas need to go up. Ears need to perk up, need to pay attention. What's happening here? Because something deeper is transpiring. There were together Simon Peter, Thomas called Didymus, and Nathanael of Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and 2 other of his disciples. Now we have a transition in time and place from John 13 through 20, verse 19, where have we been? What location?
The room.
Huh?
The room.
Okay, well, where's the room?
The upper room.
Jerusalem.
Jerusalem. Now, where are we?
On the Sea of Tiberias.
Okay, Sea of Tiberias. What region is that in?
Galilee.
Galilee. Matthew 28, verse 7. Mary was told by the angel, "Go quickly and tell his disciples that he is risen from the dead, and behold, he goeth before you into Galilee. There shall ye see him. Lo, I have told you." So we've left Jerusalem, left that behind. Now we're back home. Peter, Nathaniel, sons of Zebedee, this is where they were all called when it first started, was back in this region. So we're back home. We've left Jerusalem behind. What else have we left behind?
Persecution.
Everything that's gone on before this. The crucifixion, being absent for 3 days, all of that worry, all of that concern. Okay, that's back there. We're pressing on. And it's interesting to note the list of names that's given. There's Peter, Thomas, Nathaniel, James and John, sons of Zebedee, 2 others. Now, no way to prove it, but just let's say this was the case. So, big if on this. If the 2 unnamed disciples are Philip and Andrew, which Andrew is likely because wherever you see Peter, Andrew's usually tagging along because that's his brother. If that is the case, then what is peculiar about this group?
I know the 3 were on the Mount of Transfiguration.
Okay, so you have 3 that were there in Matthew 17.
I know the other 2 have been quoted talking, Thomas and Daniel, but I don't know about Philip and Andrew. Oh, Andrew does go and fetch Peter.
Okay.
Philip does say something at some point, but I can't remember what he says.
Okay.
But other than that, I don't know.
It's all right.
Just basically drawing on what he's saying at the very beginning was Andrew, Peter, James, and John,
Okay.
the first chosen. We're starting at the beginning again.
Okay. So aside from Thomas, it's the same group from chapter 1. We start with them, we're ending with them. These are the ones that got it all kicked off. First disciples. And here it says, there were together. The first effect that is to take place within our lives and having faith, taking these things and believing that Jesus is the Christ, He is the Son of God. First effect of the Christ on their lives in spite of all the difficulties that have transpired. And not just external difficulties, but internal difficulties. The apostles were at each other's throats a good part of the time. And here they are together. What is it that could tie people together like this? Peter.
Fishing.
Huh?
Fishing.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Peter, as impulsive and brash as he is. Thomas, for his leaning towards pessimism. Simon the Zealot, a rebel rouser against Rome. Matthew, a tax collector on behalf of Rome. James and John, And we'll get to, I really want to hold off on them. But even their presumptuousness to come before Jesus, let me sit on your right, let this one sit on his left. That would be the kind of stuff that would tear people apart. That would get in the way, cause to hold grudges. Why is that not there? These things are written that you might believe that Jesus is the Christ, He is the Son of God. Once we get past all that stuff and once we deal with that stuff, none of that matters anymore. We're not holding on to that, and like Reese said, we can go fishing together. So let's consider these individuals and their personalities as we're thinking about them being together. Peter, impulsive, brash, rash in his decision making. Sometimes it's good, but majority of the time it gets him in trouble. But Christ affected Peter so much that he was willing to repent. And that is the aim of Christianity. Christianity, Christ, is designed to change our lives, to change how we think, how we act, to where you get over to Acts chapter 10, and Peter's being told, go to Cornelius' house. How does he behave?
Why?
Huh?
Why?
Okay.
Well, initially, he has to be told 3 times.
Right.
In a dream.
Okay.
And then you guys have to actually come and tell him.
Okay.
But he's willing to accept it.
Okay.
After a lifetime of, no, stay away, these people are bad.
All right. So wouldn't it be the case that there's more caution now at this point? He doesn't just, okay, one time receive the vision, up and go and just do what he's wanting to do. No, he sits, he's there, and he kind of gets into a bit, if you can label it this way, an argument with God. Okay, nothing wrong with that, because he's not understanding. But what is he doing? He's raising arguments, he's raising questions so that he can understand. There's a change in what's going on with Peter here. Now, he still has some growing to do in that he allows peer pressure to get in the way. But overall, we're seeing some drastic changes taking place in this man. And that's being shown here by being together with everybody. So in changing our lives, it changes how we think, how we act, how we react, what we say, and even to the degree of how we love. And I think I got ahead of myself in my notes. Yeah, okay, so need to ignore that. Then we are brought to Thomas. Here's Thomas, and he's struggling to understand principles that are being laid down. John 11:16, we discussed this in our sermon. Then said Thomas, which is called Didymus, unto his fellow disciples, let us also go that we may die with him. This in reference to Lazarus. And the delay that Jesus had in going to see him. Well, if it's good for him to be dead, then let's all just go and die. All right, come on, Thomas. And then John 14:4 and 5, whither I go, ye know, the way ye know, Jesus states that. And it's Thomas that steps up and says, Lord, we know not whither thou goest, how can we know the way? John 20:25, the other disciples therefore said unto him, we have seen the Lord. But he said unto them, except I shall see in his hands the print of his nails, put my finger to the print of the nails, and thrust my hand into his side, I will not believe. But after all of this, and having seen what the apostle saw, he's forever changed. And he's forever believing. John 20:28, Thomas answered and said unto him, my Lord and my God. Okay, he was a bit pessimistic. He was a bit of a downer. But Christ changed that. He now has this steadfast faith. And that he's going to be able to press on. All right, then you got Nathaniel put into the list. Now, who recalls our introduction to Nathaniel?
I don't.
Something very special said about Nathaniel from the very start. John 1:45. Philip findeth Nathanael, saith unto him, We have found him of whom Moses in the law and the prophets did write, Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph. Nathanael said unto him, Can there any good thing come out of Nazareth? Philip saith unto him, Come and see. Jesus saw Nathanael coming to him, and saith of him, Behold an Israelite indeed, in whom is no guile. Here's Nathanael at the beginning. And there's high praise being placed on him. And look who's at the end. There's Nathanael. An Israelite indeed, in whom is no guile. Nathanael saith unto him, Whence knowest thou me? Jesus answered and said unto him, Before that Philip called thee, when thou wast under the fig tree, I saw thee. Nathanael answered and saith unto him, Rabbi, Thou art the Son of God, thou art the King of Israel. Nathanael has plowed the whole way through. Never looked back. Here we have that continuance in well-doing. What Paul wrote to the Galatian brethren, encouraging them, Galatians 6 and verse 9. Let us not be weary in well-doing. For in due season we shall reap if we faint not. So, and even with this is one of those areas where we're talking about, okay, there's many other things that went on that weren't recorded. I would be interested to know, okay, did Nathanael ever mess up? Did he ever slip up, fall back? Could be, more than likely. But even with that, even if he did, I would say what Jesus stated about him would still be true. An Israelite indeed, in whom is no guile.
Would he have been the one to open the gate for John or Peter? Was it Peter? Yeah, it was Peter.
Yeah, it was Peter.
Yeah.
Yeah, could have been, possibly. But I mean, there's a whole host of other disciples that are following at this time, so. What you got, Jamie? You want to let him in, Jordan? Go ahead and tell him to come on in. Morning.
Morning.
What you got, Jamie?
I would just say, as a contrast, here's Nathaniel in the first chapter of John, confessing that Jesus is the Son of God. But it takes Peter until Matthew, or is it Matthew 16?
Right.
Yeah, it takes him a little bit longer.
Yeah. It's interesting how it just hits people differently. So we got Peter, got Thomas, got Nathaniel, and then we got James and John, sons of Zebedee. But what moniker did they receive?
Sons of Thunder.
Jamie, you want to explain to your eldest what a moniker is?
Nickname.
Well, I was ready for that answer, and so now I'm disappointed. It's okay. Let's go ahead.
All right. Mark 3:17. And James, the son of Zebedee, John, the brother of James, and he surnamed them Boanerges, which is the sons of thunder.
Kuchig.
Yeah, so it's interesting how it is that we look at Peter as being the hothead and being the brash one, but yet here Jesus surnames these guys sons of thunder.
I always thought that just meant bold.
Oh.
Now they're willing to strike everybody dead.
Okay, so that's they would be right in line with Peter. They're wanting to strike people dead. Peter drew a sword and cut off somebody's ear. They're right there in line with each other. And then you have that, as we said, that situation in Luke 9:52, and sent messengers before his face, and they went and entered into the village of Samaritans to make ready for him. They did not receive him because his face was though he would go to Jerusalem. And when his disciples, James and John, saw this, they said, Lord, wilt thou that we command fire to come down from heaven and consume them, even as Elias did? But he, Jesus, turned and rebuked them and said, ye know not what manner of spirit ye are of. Okay, so here's what they're up to. But yet John becomes the disciple whom Jesus loved. And John writes the most about the topic of love. How do you go from son of thunder, let's call down fire from heaven to consume them, to now writing about love? What changed? Jesus got a hold of him. These things are written so that you might believe that Jesus is the Christ, He is the Son of God, and that you might have life. Here's what life looks like. Now then we have the other two unnamed. And this will bring us to our close of chapter 20. Chapter 20 and 21. There's even a crucial point to this, and we've talked about it in the past. They could have been named, but the Holy Spirit did not do so. And it's because they're not needing to be out in front. How many no-name people in the Bible have been crucial to what God has done?
It's innumerable.
Okay. It's so much that if it were to be written, the books wouldn't be able to contain. And then from the same standpoint with what we're doing today, just how many no-name people have been the backbone to the church? It's innumerable. We'll never know. Here are people that are not needing to be out in front. They're not needing to be in the limelight. They just use what they have, where they are, and they are ready to serve without any kind of acknowledgement. Not needing any recognition for what they're doing. We will meet a whole host of people in heaven and have no clue who they are.
My name is Jeff.
Just because they're just doing what God said they're needing to do. They never worked the lectureship circuit. They never worked the gospel meeting circuit. Never hosted a radio, television, or YouTube broadcast. They never wrote one article for a Brotherhood publication. They just did what they needed to do where they were needed. And some of the best people that I'm looking forward to seeing again in eternity, the world has never heard of them. But even though they do not have worldwide fame, they have done more for the kingdom and the cause of Christ than most of your big names. Well, then the question comes in. Well, if they're not named, if they're not getting the recognition, how would they do this and why would they do this? Jesus changed their life. And that's what makes the difference. And so as we read John 21, we need to think about that. And as we read about these named men, Peter, James, John, and all the great things that they will do for the church. But then not lose sight of, well, here are these no names in the same list. And then just to consider the wonderful things that the no names will do. The lesson is, never start to think that just because you do not fill the pulpit or you're not out doing some grand thing, that then means you are not important to the body and to the work of the kingdom. That instead what we need to do is we need to be like that no-name woman back in Mark 14 verse 8. We do not know her name, but she came in and she anointed Jesus' feet. Anointed him with oil, washed his feet with her tears, dried her feet with her hair, dried his feet with her hair. And Jesus looks at that and says, she has done what she could. She has come beforehand to anoint my body to the burying. Verily I say unto you, wheresoever this gospel shall be preached throughout the whole world, this that she hath done shall be spoken of her, or spoken for her, a memorial. What's her name? Who is she? What family did she come from? I have no idea. But it doesn't matter. Just do what you can. And you'll be accepted. And that's what believing Jesus will do for us. Doesn't have to be anything big. Doesn't have to be anything grand. Cold glass of water. You will not lose out on a disciple's reward. So any thoughts on closing 20 and those few verses into 21?
It's important to note that your name is written somewhere, though.
Yeah.
So you are known, just not to the brethren, but as long as your name's in that book of life, okay, you will be known.
Yep.
You are known.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when we get to the other side, we can look for this person. Okay, where is she? And we can find out then. All right, anything else?
I would just add on, in Hebrews 11, when it's talking about the great heroes of faith,
Yeah.
and all the unnamed people who were tortured or whatever,
Right.
and never gave in.
Yep.
So those would be the unnamed also.
Yep, that's a good example too. Hebrews 11. Okay. All right. Then we will stop, take a little break.